a biggie. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Shadow at Night. Let me get this off the screen. There I am. Welcome to Shadow at Night, Tuesday, July the 9th, 2024. And on the show tonight, Attorney Catherine Christensen, who is with Valor Law in Edmonton. She is the woman, she is the attorney behind suing the Canadian Armed Forces and the federal government of Canada regarding those unlawful, maybe, COVID-19 vaccine requirements for military members. It's a big lawsuit with over 300 plaintiffs, and it's worth millions and millions of dollars. And it's been ongoing for quite some time now, so we're going to get to the bottom of that with Catherine in just a couple of moments. The show is brought to you by Canada Nano Silver, CanadaNanoSilver.ca, introducing Recover, the Recover Muscle Cream. You've heard me talk about it before. It's right there. Experience the ultimate comfort and relaxation as Recover works. It's magic, formulated with cutting-edge technology. The advanced muscle cream provides unparalleled relief, catering to your unique needs. Recover is not just another muscle cream. It's the next generation of muscle relief, crafted with cutting-edge technology and premium ingredients. Recover offers a level of comfort and rejuvenation that you've never experienced before. Whether you're an athlete pushing your limits, a weekend warrior, or someone facing the daily grind, Recover is here to support you every step of the way. No chemical additives, made with the power of silverceutical technology. Check it out. And all the other fantastic products available at CanadaNanoSilver.ca, CanadaNanoSilver.ca. Also, if you're looking for a retail location near you, you can find them on the Retail Locations tab, and they're popping up everywhere, all over the country. And if you would like to become a retailer of these awesome products, get a hold of Kevin and Anna through the Contact tab at CanadaNanoSilver.ca. Again, that is CanadaNanoSilver.ca. Let's go say some quick hellos on Rumble tonight. Don't forget, guys, to get this out there with a thumbs up. And if you want to share this, you hit the share button beneath the screen. That highlights the URL above the screen. And from there, you can share it to wherever you want to share it. Email, group, social media, whatever. Sandra Showman is watching tonight on Rumble. Chicken Hair is here. Stump Slayer, D-Wags, Roberta Ailes. What's up, Canada? Wayne Peters is here yet again. Wayne, would you like to come on the show tomorrow night? We could have one of the old chinwags we haven't had in quite a while. And I've got an opening for tomorrow night, and I'd love to have you back. Mommy's Little Monster is watching from Aurelia tonight. Hugh of Heather. I don't know. The Rumble handles keep getting stranger. From Kingston, Ontario, watching. Arnie7 is watching tonight. Trifa at Proton Mail is watching tonight. Ryderm and Cindy from Nova Scotia. Winston Smith Uniacke is here as well. So let's get it out there to as many people as we possibly can. By the way, Wayne's show, What's Up Canada, Monday to Friday, 6 o'clock Central on Rumble. Go and give him a follow. Who else is watching tonight on Facebook and X and on YouTube? We've got Elsie in Winnipeg. We've got Brenda watching in Medicine Hat. Janet's watching in the Cusp. Hello, Karen in South River. Wallace is watching tonight in Meadow Lake. Everybody's complaining about the heat and the humidity. Carla's watching in Calgary tonight. Hello, Chuck in Kamloops. Sherry is watching on X in Winnipeg. Who else? Julie is here in Hillside Beach. Edna, Victoria, Russ, Kim, Evelyn. Okay, so let's have a like and a share, you guys. If you're watching on Facebook and or X, let's get it out there. You like it, and you give it a repost or a share. Again, let's get this out to as many people as we possibly can. I'm going to throw this up on the screen. I threw it up as the lead story last night. I'm throwing it up again, and the reason for that is because I'm going to ask Catherine about it. We heard last week that Dr. Charles Hoff has partially defeated the British Columbia Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons on judicial notice, which is something that the courts have been taking in regards to the efficacy and safety of these COVID-19 vaccines for the last couple of years now. So they did do some partial retraction of the judicial notice here. However, as you can see from this story, which you can find on childrenshealthdefense.ca, this is not a court of law. This is a disciplinary proceeding through the College of Physicians and Surgeons. So let's bring Catherine on right now. Hello, Catherine. Thank you for coming on tonight. Really appreciate your time. before we get to what you're doing, I wanted to put this on first because I was likely to forget if I didn't put it on first. What is your take on this lifting, a partial lifting anyway, of the judicial notice in this disciplinary hearing?
Well, I'm actually glad the body dealing with this, because judicial notice is something that should not be used lightly. And I was really struggling with our court saying, well, we're going to take judicial notice because the government said it was true. No, that's not what judicial notice is about. Judicial notice is an undisputed fact, such as the sky is blue today.
Right. Right.
And for them to say, oh, it's safe and effective because Health Canada says so. Nope. And this tribunal has just said exactly that. The Health Canada or the College of Physicians is going to have to prove that it was safe and effective. Well, I would like to see it go further into an actual court, because then it would set precedent in the legal world. But it's also very useful for me because I'm dealing with an administrative law angle by dealing with military.
Right.
So if I've got a whole bunch of grievances sitting on the Chief of Defense Staff desk, and if they don't accept the Military External Review Committee's findings that there was a breach of the charter rights, which makes it an unlawful mandate, an unlawful order, I can carry this. Well, you can't take judicial notice of safe and effective anymore.
So do you actually think that this will translate into court cases like your own?
I'm certainly going to use it. Yes.
Well, you're going to try to use it. I mean, the judge has got to say, right? And
so it probably would be easier for me to use in what's called a judicial review.
Right.
So when there's a tribunal decision and you don't agree with it, you could ask the court to review that decision. And that's where I think it can be made into law.
Is there any mechanism? I've asked other lawyers this question and I've gotten this blank stare. So I'll ask you. When a judge decides he or she is going to take judicial notice, and again, as you pointed out, the grass is green, the sky is blue, it's just acknowledged as fact. And in this case, they're acknowledging the fact that the COVID-19 vaccines were safe and effective according to Health Canada, and that's good enough for them. Is there a way, once that is implemented in the case, to have that looked at and overturned, or do you have to start a whole new trial for that?
I would suspect you could probably challenge it on appeal. Here's the problem. The decisions that we've had that have now gone up to the appeal courts have been about mootness. There's never actually been a case carried forward based on the merits of the case.
Right.
So we're still in the early stages of legal action regarding COVID mandates and the whole thing. We're still really new at it. We're new at it here. So I can see it coming, though.
So, Catherine, I mean, if they decide, because there's this, and there's something I talked about the other night and last night on the show as well, there's this summit. There's a bird flu summit coming up in Washington in early October. And it sounds strangely like Event 201, because that was held in New York City in October of 2019. And then poof, 6 months later, we had a worldwide pandemic declared. So, I don't mean to alarm anybody when I say that. And some people out there watching this right now are going to say, Shadow, you're absolutely crazy. But, I mean, the fact that they're even taking the time to have a seminar like this, and it's a 3 or 4 day gathering, it's no small thing. And a lot of experts are going to be talking at this gathering. So let's just say that the bird flu, the avian flu, H5N2, or whatever new concoction they come up with, actually does become a pandemic, a worldwide declared pandemic again. Because of all of the mootness rulings we've had in Canada, and that means that they haven't rescinded any of these regulations. Am I correct in saying that? Or any of these laws or any of these mandates? They've just kind of gone away for now.
Right. So they put them on hold. The difference being the Canadian Armed Forces still have a mandate in place.
Right. So we're going to get to your. we'll get to your because your case is very fascinating, and I've been wanting to have you on for a while. And it was such a pleasure to meet you in Beausejour a couple of weekends ago. But these mandates that were just kind of placed on hold. Does this mean that they can bring them back at any time they want to, based upon the fact that the courts have not had a ruling? And is that possibly why the Crown is fighting so hard in these cases?
I think so, yeah. And they can bring it back really fast. The difference this time, and what I'm hoping will happen, is that lawyers will act more quickly and get their butts into court and go for injunctions and bring suits before they can justify withdrawing it suddenly in order to get that mootness ruling.
Yeah, so, when we talk about acting more quickly as far as lawyers are concerned, I'm sure there's still a large faction of legal minds in this country who wouldn't want to touch a case like this because they don't want to upset their standing in the law community. But let's just say we add another 100 or so lawyers who are willing to take some of these cases on. Do you think with everything that's happened in the past 3 or 4 years that they'd be able to come up with a more cogent strategy to fight back against these regulations?
I would hope so. I really hope so.
So would I, but do you think they could?
Yeah. Here's the problem, is that Canadian lawyers are about 200 years behind our American counterparts on holding our government to account. So my tactics and strategy come from American lawyers. I hooked up with American lawyers doing what I do and a handful of lawyers in Canada are doing. And I'm using American-style tactics. Our laws might be different, but the tactics are the same because we're all based on the British law system. So the Crown doesn't quite know what to do with me because I'm not fighting fair.
No, actually, you are. They haven't been fighting fair for a long time, so
No,
I'm glad to see. I'm glad to see that we've got a lawyer in this country who's willing to roll up her sleeves and get down and dirty with these clowns. Your lawsuit is against the military. Well, I guess certain members. You've named certain members of the military. Chief of Staff, former Chief of Staff Wayne Eyre. You've named Defense Minister at the time, Anita Anand. You've got over 300 plaintiffs involved in this case so far. I mean, when this came to you, because you operate a boutique law firm in Edmonton, Catherine, let's be honest here. You're not exactly a massive operation here. I mean, did you go, yeah, I could take this on, but this is running a really big risk here because how are you ever going to have another case? How are you going to keep... This reminds me of, what's that movie with Julia Roberts?
Oh, Aaron Brockovich.
Aaron Brockovich. That's what this reminds me of.
I have watched some of those clips to remind me of what I have taken on.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, do you have any help in this, or are you all on your own here?
So I'm the only lawyer. However, here's my advantage. There's 2 mass torts. They're pretty much the same. We filed one in June. Then I had a bunch of people come forward, and the only people who could meet the statute of limitations date, which was in October of 23, I got 128 more. So we have 458 members of the military or veterans who have come forward to bring this mass tort for abuse of power.
Wow.
Here's my magic formula. I have 458 of some of the best Canada has to offer. They're smart. They know what they're doing. They're motivated. Give them their orders and they carry them out. So I have a big green battalion behind me helping me do this. And they know the system better than the Department of Justice, who is representing the Canadian Armed Forces and the Government of Canada. I'll give you an example. I was not related to this case, but I was in a courtroom with the Department of Justice lawyer, and I used the acronym of DOAD, which is basically the acronym for the policies of the Canadian Armed Forces. Now, the justice on the bench asked me, what do you mean by DOAD? And I wasn't too surprised about that. But I was very surprised when the Crown lawyer said to me, yeah, what's a DOAD? And I'm thinking, you don't even know the acronym for policy for the Canadian Armed Forces? That's when I realized that the Department of Justice lawyers don't know their own client.
Wow.
So I have 458 experts behind me. That's how we've dug up almost 500,000 pages of evidence. They were there. They know to tip their own conversations.
have you sat down with each one of these members or former members and listened to their stories?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. And what are the ones that stand out to you the most?
So,
and you can take your time with this because we've got lots of time here.
Yeah. So the one that the first group of people, I asked them, when I go on these interviews, what's the one story for sure that you always want me to talk about? And this is a young soldier was in Saint Jean, Quebec. It was January, February of 22, which you remember is right around the trucker convoy era. So
Yeah.
it was
It's
bitter.
ringing a bell.
It was bitter. It was cold. It was a typical Quebec winter. His female commanding officer, Major Hardy, ordered him to stand outside in the cold. For 6 weeks he lasted, every day in the cold. He lost 30 pounds of muscle mass until he finally couldn't do it anymore.
How?
That's physical torture.
That is. And how long per day? Like, we're talking about an 8-hour, 12-hour.
Yep. His whole day. He was ordered to be there before the rest of the group would be there for their regular day, so that he would have to stand outside the building and everyone would walk past him and taunt him. They taunt him through the windows. They tell him how stupid he was. They post on pictures of him on Facebook and make fun of him there. This kid, if this CO did this to a prisoner of war, she'd be in The Hague for a war crime. And she did this to her own troop. So if she'll do it to her own people, what will she do to a prisoner of war? Is my question.
Let me ask you, that's obviously an unlawful order.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if that's a separate case that you can launch as well against this one particular commanding officer.
They're pretty protected by the Crown liability laws, but it serves as a very good example of abuse of power, because I knew I couldn't bring a COVID lawsuit back in October of 21 when the military mandate came in. I knew I wasn't going to even get in a courtroom with COVID. So it was like, okay, everybody's telling me these stories and there's just one after another. And I'm thinking, I have to do something about this. I can't live with myself. If I tell them to go away, we can't do anything. So then I thought, well, I've been watching the forces. I've been watching them for years. And all of this, the sexual misconduct stuff, all the racial stuff, that is all abuse of power. It all boils down to people feeling comfortable with abusing the power they hold over those in the ranks below. So everybody comes to me with, there were thousands of stories, and it boiled down to hundreds willing to put their name on the paper. But I thought, wait a minute, General Eyre just handed me an abuse of power lawsuit on a silver platter, because this isn't one or two people, a disgruntled veteran or a bad apple. This is hundreds of people who were abused by their commanding officers and the chain of command. You can't just count that many people. And we're talking people with not a single blemish on their records. There was one woman, she was only a few months away from a full retirement after 36 years of service. She had deployed, left her family behind. Her husband was terminally ill with cancer in the private married quarters on Wainwright, where she was posted, and they gave her a 5F release. She should have been a medical release for injuries, but came after her pension.
Wow.
I mean, her husband died a few months later. So then, because she's being released, she can't stay in military housing. So she's trying to find somewhere to live with no income and a husband dying of cancer. Then her commanding officer had no compassion for it at all.
Are there other stories like that? I mean, the more stories that you can get out, the better off we're going to be. I mean, people, who are watching this right now or will be watching this in the next week or so, they're going to be aghast at hearing the examples that you're about to lay out. And when you do present this case, are you going to have to lay out all 458 different examples? Or are you just going to, you've got to do, wow, it's going to be a long one then, I guess, huh?
Yeah. If we ever go to trial, we're looking at months.
Okay, so what is the status then of your case right now? I mean, has the government come to you and said, all right, look, Catherine, maybe you'd consider something other than going to trial? Or no?
No. The senior counsel for the government is quite upset with me. For one thing, he doesn't understand what the lawsuit's about. He thinks it should all go to the grievance system, even though the grievance system has said, no, there's claims here that can't be handled by the grievance system. It has to go to civil court. So that'll be interesting. So right from the moment I filed, I got a letter that said, there's nothing here. I'm bringing a motion to dismiss your case. This is going to go away, and it's going to cost your clients a fortune. And I ignored him. So then we filed the second one. That made him even crankier. So then he kept threatening with motion to dismiss. So I just kept going. I following the rules of court. Eventually filed a defense. I filed a reply, and then I started sending an affidavit of documents, which is a list of our evidence. And he didn't send me his. So I said, well, where is it? And he ignored me. So I brought a motion in the court, because I can do that, to force him to give it to me. And we ended up in case management. And I thought, well, this is going to be good, because case management justice can give us decisions faster, and it's always the same one. So they get to know the file really well. So away we go into case management. And he starts off with, the Crown is bringing a motion to dismiss. This needs to happen. And I said, my reaction was, great. He keeps threatening me with it. If he wants to do it, let's get it over with. Let's do it. And the justice said, her reaction was fantastic. She looked and said, I agree. Let's get this done. And then the Crown lawyer said, well, we need, the courts are closed for July and August. We're going to be going into the fall. So we should set this for next year. This is my word. And sometimes you don't get in the way when your enemy's making a mistake. So the justice lifts her head on the screen and goes, we aren't closed in July and August. There's a couple of weeks where the judges take off so that we get some time off. But we're not closed for the summer. I have August 20th open on my calendar, counsel. How's that work for you? To which I said, works fine for me. And he kind of stumbled around a little bit. So August 20th, we're going in for the hearing. His brief is due this Friday, July the 12th. And then my reply is due August 9th. And
so this hearing, it's not to decide the entire case. It's just to decide whether it goes ahead or not, correct?
Exactly. So my clients have 31 claims. I only need one to survive to keep going. And
do you live next to a drag race track, by the way?
No. But it's Alberta, Shadow.
Right. A lot of big F-350s. Yeah.
And motorcycles.
Right. So go ahead, please. Yep.
So we only need one claim. I already have, he's bringing it, we're too early. We should go through the grievance system. I already have it from the committee that says charter breaches can't be dealt with in the grievance system. So I already know I've got that much to keep going.
So is it different with a military case as opposed to just a regular everyday Canadian citizen case when it comes to charter breaches, or is it much the same?
For charter breaches, it's exactly the same. Just because they wear a uniform doesn't mean they gave up their charter rights.
Yeah, because that's something that people have actually asked me about, and I've never really looked into, is when you are a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, I think somebody told me a couple of years ago, you waive your rights, because there are, in fact, mandatory vaccine regulations for members who are deployed overseas into certain countries. Am I correct?
Now there's where you're getting into something that I really enjoy explaining to people.
Okay.
Under Section 126 of the National Defence Act, the Chief of Defence Staff can order mandatory vaccination. And if you don't want to take the vaccination, you are allowed a court-martial. You're charged by a formal charge. You go to court-martial, and if you have a reasonable excuse for not taking it, you are acquitted. This happened in the Kipling case with the anthrax vaccine for Iraq at the end of the 90s. But here's the catch. The mandate did not use Section 126 of the National Defence Act. I think because they knew they couldn't survive a challenge, religious exemption, etc. they would never survive that challenge. And then you set up a precedent. You've got 3,000 people winning against your mandate. Let's face it, the JAG office is too small to do 3,000 courts martial.
Right.
You know? So they did it as an administrative measure, and they just screwed it up royally. They ended up with 3 different directives, or 4 different directives in the end, because every time they issue a new one, I'd have a Zoom meeting, and then they'd realize what mistakes they'd made, and they'd try to fix it. But they messed up badly. So they can't use I have the authority to order it. No, you don't. And and the other issue is there's policy that says you cannot vaccinate a pregnant woman in the military with anything. There's also policy from the Kipling case that says you can't use military members for experimental drugs.
Okay, so this is
informed consent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
This is where you're going to have to try and get around that judicial notice by saying, no, this is experimental. Because if you don't, you're never going to be able to use experimental drugs in court proceedings. Judicial notice would just stomp all over you, right?
Right. Yeah. So this is where this Hoff decision, where this tribunal said, well, no, we can't say judicial notice of safe and effective because Health Canada says it's safe and effective.
Right.
We can say they approved it, but that doesn't mean it's safe and effective.
Yeah, they've also approved all kinds of junk food you can buy in stores that have all kinds of cancer-causing agents in them. So, I mean, Health Canada's approval means nothing.
Yeah, they approved thalidomide, too.
Right? Right? We know what thalidomide was all about back in the 50s and the early 1960s. So this is a charter case, then. You're not necessarily making this about COVID-19 or the vaccine, am I right?
No, the COVID mandate is an example of an abuse of power, because to bring an abuse of power lawsuit against the forces, I could have rounded up people and had 1999 they did this, 2003 they did this, 2011 this happened. Instead of having to do that and pull all these things in, I've got October 8th, 2021, the Chief of Defense Staff issues this mandate. And then from there, all of his commanding officers did all of these things that abused their power from that moment on. So it nicely bundles. So when I walk into a courtroom with 500,000 pages of documents, I'm talking about one instance as an example of the abuse of power within the military.
Right.
So that makes it much easier for me to explain to the person on the bench why my clients should get what they're asking for. Which charter sections of the charter are you focusing on? Charter so Section 7, Section 15, the Section 2A with the religious exemptions. So there's a few. There's more. Section 8. We have quite a few. Are you concerned that they're going to throw Section 1 in your face and that's going to be the end of that? They are going to. I can guarantee that they will. But I'm not too worried about it because there's lots of things backing me up. And when we received the notice from the Military Review Committee saying that there were definitely charter breaches, that just made it much stronger. How would you respond? You can still hear me, yeah? Because because something has happened. Have we said hello to the Canadian Forces National Investigation Service yet? Hey, Canadian Forces National Investigation Service, you're going to lose bad. So where was I here? So are you prepared? Do you have an argument prepared when they throw Section 1 up at you? Oh, yes. Yep. It wasn't. They're not. The infringements are not justified at all. And I mean, I have their own committee telling in writing saying that the infringement was not justified. Okay, so you figure that you're going to be able to carry on.
Like, how long does it take for a ruling if the Crown says, well, Section 1, Your Honor, or Your Worship, or however you refer to this particular judge, and the judge says sidebar, and you go and have this discussion about Section 1? Is it like a 15-minute discussion, or is it something that would take the judge a couple of weeks to rule on?
So if they're going to bring the Section 1 argument, that's going to be at a trial, which will take a long time because of how many people there are. And then it could take months to get a decision out of the federal court. So
this is a federal court case. You're going right to the federal court. Wow.
Yeah. Because it's the Canadian military. So
right.
They fall under the federal court because we're suing the government.
I suppose. So obviously, Catherine, this is going to be a long, drawn-out process. We're talking
we'll
about...
see what happens when they don't get their case dismissed.
Well, no, this is what I mean, right? Like, they're not going to get their case dismissed. Obviously, I believe that you've got enough to convince the judge that this should go to trial. So you go to federal court, and let's just say you win in federal court. You know that the Crown is going to appeal. You know that's going to happen. So then you got to go to appeals court. This quite probably could wind up in the hands of the Supreme Court of Canada, right?
Yes. Yeah. There's a good possibility.
And we're talking about a process that is years long. This could be up to 5 years. Are you prepared for this? I mean, this is...
I am. I mean, I've been representing these people since October of 2021. We tried for an injunction in December of 21 to stop the mandate. I didn't expect success. Injunctions in Canada are extremely hard to get. But what it did is it revealed the other side's argument.
Right.
So the same argument he's going to bring against me in August, they brought in December of 21. So I already have their argument. We already have all we need to defeat it. But what it did was they said, so the justice in the injunction hearing said, oh, no, you need to use the grievance system first. So I met with my clients. I said, okay, they want us to use the grievance system because they're all in at this point. I said, I want every single one of you, while you're still serving, to file a grievance over every single little thing you could grieve. And don't put it into a bundle of my grievance with a bunch of stuff. I want every single grievance, every single issue to be a grievance. In 6 months, we filed 10,000 grievances. We broke it. It was already bad, but we broke the system.
Wow.
Absolutely broke it. So that when I stand up in August, I can say they tried to use it. They tried to use it, but it's broken. They can't use it.
Have you experienced an array of emotions with the members who were involved in this case? I mean, certainly with 458 members, and I know how loyal that these members are to their service brothers and sisters and the organization in general. They want to serve their country. Did they feel as though by being a part of this case, at least some of them, I'm not going to say all, but are there some that feel as though they're actually betraying the armed forces and the country?
No, quite the opposite, in fact. They see themselves as the tip of the spear to bring about change in the Canadian Armed Forces so that no one else has to go through what they went through. Because these people with absolutely exemplary careers, from the rank of private to lieutenant colonel and the Navy equivalent, got tossed aside like they were garbage. And they were the best Canada has to offer, the absolute best. And even the ones that aren't part of this lawsuit, a big part of the loss of people in the Canadian Armed Forces and the reason we can't recruit is this mandate, because it showed that there was no loyalty. The key to military command structure is that the people who serve under the commanding officer have to absolutely trust that whatever order they're given there's a reason for it. If they're told to take that hill and they're probably going to die when they do it, they have to believe that there's a reason for it and they're willing to do it. What happened was they felt absolutely betrayed by the chain of command. The trust in the chain of command is gone in the Canadian Armed Forces. the people in the lower ranks don't trust the higher ranks. And when that happens, you don't have a military anymore. Because they can't trust them that they're actually looking out for their best interests.
So what's happening now, because they can't do effective recruitment with Canadian citizens, they're actually going to be accepting foreign nationals, we understand, people who are not even citizens of this country. So I guess they're going to have to amend the rules for qualifying to be a member of the Canadian Armed Forces in the next couple of years, just to keep their quotas up. I mean, right now, I've heard where they're down around 15,000 full-time members when they're supposed to be at 80. Am I correct?
Well, ideally, our military would be 98,000, but they hovered around 68,000 before this whole COVID thing happened. Constantly around 68. So they were already down numbers. And then they lost thousands to the mandate. And what they didn't lose to the mandate, they lost to DEI woke agendas.
Right.
And of course, they've just announced that the Queen of DEI is now going to be Chief of Defense Staff.
Yeah. I heard the boys on the V4F talking about that, and they say, I was right. I think it was Jeff who was saying, Jeff Evely, I was right about this. I was right the whole time. I think Drew said the same thing, McGilvery. So you said that some of these 458 are still serving, correct?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And these mandates, these vaccine mandates are still in place, right?
Yes.
So how is it that they're still serving? Have they been relegated to lower duty or something?
Well, some of them were given what in the military they call shit postings or punishment postings. So some of them were that. Some were moved around to try. Like some of the pilots were given positions where they wouldn't touch an airplane again. But this just only helps my lawsuit because some of them are deploying with no vaccine because they're so short of people. They're deploying them.
Wow!
All of a sudden, the mandate isn't quite so enforceable.
Is there any hope? I mean, this is a question that's a little bit off topic regarding the lawsuit, Catherine, but I know that you've spent a lot of time with these folks. And the military, the Canadian military, has obviously been completely depleted and morally bankrupt now at this point. Is there any hope of rebuilding it to where it once was? I mean, I remember living in Kingston, Ontario, I don't know, 20 years ago or so, and that's where they've got, that's where Royal Military College is, for goodness sakes. That's where CFB Kingston is. These bump into military people all the time, and I was always very happy and excited even to talk to a member of the military, and proudly. And nowadays, it's like I'm not sure if I should approach them because of everything that's gone on. You don't know what to say. You might say the wrong thing, and who knows?
Right.
Is there any chance of rebuilding what used to be?
They need to complete the destruction. It's pretty close to being completely destroyed. They need to let it fail to the point of ashes and then rebuild from the ashes.
Maybe that's what they're doing.
Well, I will be honest with your listeners. I am suspecting they might be going to Kim Campbell, General Kerrigan.
Say again, repeat.
I think they're going to Kim Campbell, General Kerrigan.
So you think that General Kerrigan is just kind of a stopgap measure until they can actually bring in somebody who can forcefully command the Canadian Armed Forces and bring back that integrity?
It looks like it.
Or are they dedicated to this?
She won't survive a conservative government, for sure.
Right. Wow. It's amazing to me that people don't seem to understand. And this is kind of a sad commentary on our country because all of our institutions have been compromised. And these institutions, Catherine, we're talking about the RCMP and the judicial system and the medical system and all of that. They are not supposed to be compromised by government at all. I mean, these are institutions that are supposed to be independent of government interference, right?
Yes. Well, especially our military and our judicial system. We don't swear an oath to the government. We don't swear an oath to the people of Canada. We swear an oath to the Crown. To the King of Canada right now is who I owe my loyalty to.
Yeah, but the King
And
of
that's who
Canada.
the military owes it to.
Yeah, but the King of Canada is big into DEI as well. So
He
I think
is. He is. I'm not saying
that's
it's a solution. I'm just saying, but there's an actual purpose to it, and that's going all the way back to the English Civil War. Cromwell, when they were bringing Charles II back in as King of England, the deal was that he kept control of the court and he kept control of the military. And the reason for that was if the Parliament ever turned on the people again, the king could turn the military and the courts on the Parliament. And this is why I'm really disappointed in lawyers in Canada through this whole mandates, lockdowns, the travel, the whole thing, the Emergencies Act. Where were my colleagues? Our job is to hold the government to account. That's a lawyer's job. To step up and say, this does not, you're not allowed to do this. Here's the line, and you're not allowed to cross it. And so many lawyers just rolled over. And that I was really disgusted. Like my clients, when they reached out to a couple of other lawyers who had been JAG officers that are now in private practice, they were told, you were given an order, follow it. Not one of those lawyers stepped back and thought, wait a minute, was this a lawful order? Not one of them. It took a civilian lawyer with a lot of practice with military people to step back and say, wait a minute, you can't order people to do what you're ordering them to do. And in fact, the JAG Corps, I've got the briefing notes, I've got the evidence to show they told General Eyre he could not do this. They told him it was illegal, and he did it anyway.
If you've got those notes, I mean, your case is already won as far as I'm concerned. It's just a matter of riding the rapids at this point, I think.
Exactly.
You're asking for over $1 million per plaintiff, am I right?
Yes, so it worked out to about 1.5 with all the claims.
So we're talking in the area of roughly $650 million if you win this thing.
Yes.
I mean...
Yes.
that could break the Canadian Armed Forces right there and then.
Well, they're not spending their money on bullets or equipment, so
sure they are. They're just giving them to Ukraine.
Well, some of my clients are joking that they could meet their NATO requirement if they pay out our lawsuit. Then they could add that to the defense budget and say, "Look, we spent 2%."
We're one of the. I think we're the one of only two nations that isn't now when it comes to NATO. 23 of the 25 are, and 2 aren't, and we're one of them. Thanks, Justin Trudeau. Yeah. Are there any of the plaintiffs who are thinking, you know what, I can't do this anymore, and they're going to drop out, or are they all resolute?
They're all resolute to go through with this because they're still angry. 3 years later, they're livid. They're furious that the military they devoted their lives to would do such a thing.
Are you gaining members now? I mean, like you started off with 300 and now you're 458. Is there a chance of any more signing on?
I get calls every week wanting to join. The problem is the statute of limitations timed out in October of 23.
Rats.
So, well, maybe it's not completely dead. The Crown might want to keep it in mind that if I win the mass tort, maybe there'll be a class action that follows.
Right. So a whole new process. And this time you got 1,000 of them. Wow, that would be something. So, that would be something. Catherine, go ahead.
We got JTF too. We got Special Forces soldiers who have been severely injured from the vaccines they were given. I've got healthy young men the biggest group is between 35 and 40, dropping dead in their sleep because they took the vaccine. They followed the order to keep their job.
Is that absolutely proven that these deaths are due to the jab?
Well, it is by time, etc., symptoms. Here's the catch. The Department of National Defense is fighting me hard on giving me their medical records.
once
Veterans Affairs is denying vaccine injury claims. They're saying, yes, some of them they're going, yes, you were injured by the vaccine, but that's not service related, so we're not going to cover you. These are people having to release from the military because they're so badly injured, and they're being left with nothing. Nothing. No benefits, nothing.
So this takes me back to the other topic that we were discussing, that it seems as though the military, the Crown, they are absolutely adamant that they're not going to give any ground on this. And the only reason that I can see for this is that they plan on doing it again.
Yes. Yeah, they considered themselves that it was successful enough to do it again. And to do it again, they have to have the right people in the military's case, the right person in the Chief of Defense Staff's chair. Because they got rid of a lot of generals who said no.
Yeah, I heard you talking about that in Beausejour a couple of weekends ago. I was very surprised to hear, and each one of these generals that came along wound up with some kind of a sexual complaint against them or something like that. Can you give us a little bit more on that?
I sure can. So, Chief of Defense Staff, when vaccines first started to become a real thing, was Jonathan Vance. He had been having an affair for years with one of his members that was a junior in rank to him. And he'd even had children with the woman. And he gets a visit from Jody Thomas, who was Deputy Minister of Defense at the time. And she tells him, you're going to give it 100% vaccination rate to set an example for the Canadian people. First of all, that's not our military's job. He said, no, I can't do that. He knew the law. And he said, what if there's something wrong with this vaccine? You're going to wipe out my entire military. And, you're not using my people as guinea pigs. Because everyone in the military pretty much got Moderna. Even at a time where Moderna was already being withdrawn in other countries, our military was still giving it.
Right.
So, lo and behold, all of a sudden he's got a sexual misconduct allegation and he's booted. Along comes Admiral MacDonald. He's not in there for more than a couple of weeks. I have the briefing note where it says, you cannot do this. This is not going to fly. You can't do it. He says, no, I won't do it. Sexual misconduct allegations. So then in comes acting Chief of Defense Staff Wayne Eyre. General Danny Fortin was in charge of the public rollout of vaccines. And he said, no, I'm not going to mandate it. Sexual misconduct allegations.
So that's three.
That's three.
And then Wayne Eyre comes in and he goes ahead and does it, right?
Well, hold on. So Wayne Eyre is acting Chief of Defense Staff. He gets a memo. He gets a briefing note that says you can't do this. No way. Written by Trevor Cadieux. Trevor Cadieux, sexual misconduct allegations. General Whalen says, look, I'm head of HR for the military. What you're doing between the mandates and the DEI stuff, you're killing the military. We can't recruit. Sexual misconduct allegations.
Wow.
And just in case you think it's only in Canada, as soon as the Labour government was elected, one of their former military commanders, who was very outspoken about everything, has just been charged with sexual misconduct allegations.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's happening in France right now as well. Marine Le Pen, who just recently lost the elections in France, is now going to be tried on some sort of campaign funding corruption charges. These people, they want to just destroy the other side, right? Yeah. And they're going to use any kind of legal means or lawfare that they can think of.
Yeah, it's absolute lawfare. Now, keep in mind, all of these gentlemen have been cleared. Interesting for me on General Whalen is that during his court-martial, when it came time for his defense to present their case, they called General Eyre to the stand, and the charges were withdrawn immediately. They didn't want Eyre to testify.
Do you have... Go ahead. Go ahead.
And the Crown is working really, really hard to keep me from deposing General Eyre. But I'm not going to start with Wayne Eyre. I'm going to start with Trevor Cadieu, Danny Fortin, Stephen Whalen,
Yeah. Are you
Jonathan
gonna
Vance, Art
are you
McDonald.
gonna be able to bring in these guys as witnesses?
Yes.
Oh, this is gonna be.
Okay, so there's a saying, Shadow. Be careful who you step on your way up, because you're going to meet them on your way down. And none of those 5 gentlemen will have any loyalty to Wayne Eyre.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
named Wayne Eyre personally, so his retiring is not going to get him out of this.
Well, I don't see how any, like these guys. You know what? Do you think that Wayne Eyre would still have the juice to be able to go to the Crown and say, "Look, it man, I really don't want to go through this, and she's going to make me go through this. She's going to haul my ass up there, and she is going to go upside one side of me and down the other." That's going to absolutely destroy what's left of his reputation. Do you think that somebody like him would be able to convince the Crown to just say, "All right, let's make a deal," or are they going all the way on this?
Well, it's hard to say. That they're protecting him a lot. The other person that needs to worry is Nita Anand, with an election coming.
Yeah, well,
and so is Jody Thomas. So,
well, look, these liberals, they don't have a chance of winning the next election, no matter when it is. But you mentioned earlier in our discussion that none of these people are going to be able to survive a conservative government. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because people never think about this, right? Like Pierre Poilievre over the weekend, he had these fantastic speeches at the Calgary Stampede, and thousands of people yelling and cheering, axe the tax and whatnot. So let's say that the Conservatives win a supermajority. They've still got a Liberal Senate. I mean, 85 of the 105 positions in the Senate right now have been appointed by Justin Trudeau, whether they're independent senators or whether they're Liberal senators. It doesn't matter. So the Conservatives are not going to be able to get past the Senate if the Senate decides to stand up and say no to the Conservative government. They're not going to be able to pass a law. So
yeah, you mean if our Senate actually does what it's supposed to do?
Well, what I'm saying, like, no. You see, in this situation, but but in this situation, because they've all been appointed by Trudeau, I think feels protected that the Conservatives are not going to be able to get anything passed because of this Liberal Senate. It creates a constitutional crisis. Do you foresee something in the next 3 years where they have to reopen the Constitution and rework it to get rid of the Senate in some way?
They may have to, or they may have to go to an elected Senate. That might be. The other challenge we've got is it's a Liberal Supreme Court of Canada.
Yeah.
So our chief, here's how corrupt our Supreme Court of Canada, and I can get in trouble as a lawyer saying that out loud, but here I screamed about this when it happened and nobody paid any attention. When they removed the previous Governor General from her office, they put in a temporary Governor General. That temporary Governor General was Richard Wagner. He held the role of Governor General and Chief of the Supreme Court of Canada at the same time. So he is signing laws to make them laws by royal assent that he may have to rule on later as Chief Justice.
Huge conflict.
Huge. Also, what division of powers, right? Legislative branch, judicial branch. And
also, I mean,
he thought it was fine.
Wagner is, I believe he was tweeting as the chief of the Supreme Court of Canada. He was tweeting all about the safety and efficacy of the vaccines and how the mandates were absolutely helping people to stay alive. So how on earth can he remain in that position if a COVID case comes to him?
Well, he definitely would have to he would have to recuse himself. He won't, but he would have to recuse himself.
So we've got a corrupt Supreme Court.
Well, here's a story about the Supreme Court of Canada.
All right.
There was a justice on the bench by the name of Russell Brown. And full disclosure, he was my torts professor in law school. I also did independent legal research with him as part of my law degree, which means I worked closely with him for an entire term. Ironically, the subject, Shadow, was informed consent. So I know very well his legal opinion on informed consent because I wrote a paper for him that my grades depended on. So was sitting on the Supreme Court, and I knew he was just waiting for a COVID case to make it that high, because I knew what his position was going to be on this. And he was pretty much the only conservative justice we had on the bench. He was appointed by Harper.
Yeah.
Now,
right.
our Supreme Court justices are always escorted by security detail here in Canada. They have drivers and security detail. He went to Arizona, no security detail, to present an award to Louise Albor, one of our former Chief Justices, was getting an award down in Arizona, and he went to do the speech. So he's down there by himself. All of a sudden, we hear this story about a young Marine with his girlfriend in the bar, and that the Justice Brown had been inappropriate with them, and that this young Marine had hit him, and there was police and all the rest of it. Not one picture of Justice Brown with a black eye or whatever. I mean, a 30-something-year-old Marine against a Chief Justice in his 50s, there's going to be some physical damage that somebody would see somewhere. Anyway, so there was these very vague allegations that perhaps he'd been inappropriate. And he was forced to resign from the Supreme Court of Canada. In his place has been appointed another Alberta justice. She was our Chief Justice here. She sanctioned her own husband, who is a lawyer, a criminal defense lawyer. He refused to wear a mask in court, and she sanctioned him for it.
I don't even know what to say to that, man. Like these people, like they're indoctrinated so hard, right? That they're going to give up their own spouse and sanction their own spouse rather than lose this crazy dogma. It's amazing to me, and it still permeates in all of our institutions. So Poilievre's going to have a lot of work to do if he is the man we think he is. Catherine, I wish you all the best in this, and all of the members, all 458, the best in this as well. And I certainly hope that you'll pop on with updates every now and again to let us know how things are going. Notably, next month you've got this hearing coming up, and I'd definitely love to hear what happens there. That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to get in touch with me. We can book it so that you can talk to me soon after.
Okay, great. Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate it. Thanks very much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks.
All right. There is Catherine Christensen. She is with Valor Law in Edmonton, and she is taking the government and the military to court. In case you have missed the entire interview, please go ahead and watch it one more time, right from the beginning, here on Facebook or on YouTube or on Twitch, if you're watching on X, if you're watching on Rumble or Telegram or on shadowdavis.com, which is where we're just about to head to in just a couple of minutes for the extension. Tonight on the extension, what have we got here? Oh, yeah, the big NATO summit started today in Washington, and Justin Trudeau was there. So we're going to start on the extension tonight with video and photos of Justin Trudeau boarding his plane and heading down to Washington or New York, wherever this thing is, and waving to a crowd. Then we have video of his speech to all of the NATO representatives, and you'll be amazed at what he talks about. Amazed. Another Biden gaffe. What else? And it's not just a gaffe this time for Joe Biden. It's something a little bit worse, because DEI and intersectionality and critical race theory is big in his party down in the United States. Well, he said something today in front of all of these delegates at NATO that could be unforgivable unless it was just simply a gaffe. So we're going to play that video for you. We also have video of the Liberal Party of Canada trying to link Pierre Poilievre with Donald Trump, because, of course, Donald Trump is terrible. Even with his more favorable response from Canadians, according to a poll last week, Canadians tend to like him more now than they did a couple of years ago. They still don't like him very much, the majority of Canadians. So, of course, the Liberal Party seizes on that, and they go, how can we tie Trump and Poilievre together? So they use a phrase to tie the two of them together. I will play, and actually, Whoever is tweeting or operating the Liberal Party's social media apparatus is either a trained monkey and not very well trained at that, or some student who's working on a summer internship, because they have absolutely no idea what they're doing. This video would actually be a better commercial for conservatives and for Republicans in the United States than it is for the Liberals and their DEI agenda. So we're going to get to that in just a couple of minutes as well on the extension for all access members at shadowdavis.com. So if you're a member, I'll see you there in a couple of minutes. If not, why don't you become one? Go, it's cheap. And I'm going to be giving away Shadow at Night coffee mugs in the next month or so for all access members. Not all of you guys are going to get them because I can't afford to give you all coffee mugs, but I'm definitely going to be doing draws. And real ones, not like the kind they do on radio stations where they actually pick the winner of their $1,000 contests as long as that person fits their demographic, their chosen demographic, 35 to 54. We need somebody, and we're going for males here, so we need somebody who's 46 years old and a man, and they will go into their little draw box or their database, and they will pick that person to win. It's not random, not at all. I don't care what they say. I worked in radio for years, and I know how it works. Me, conversely, I'll do it randomly. I don't care. Because I haven't got a set demographic. Everybody is welcome here. Everybody. Everybody. So I'll see you for the extension on shadowdavis.com in just a couple of minutes. If not, I will catch you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central for another Shadow at Night live stream. I love you all, and I appreciate you all, and I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.